Alright, Trickers and Trickers, time for the final episode review of the day, which is also going to be the final episode of Season 1, with the Neutral Zone. While Captain Picard is away at an emergency Federation conference, the Enterprise crew discovers an ancient space capsule from Earth. Inside they find 3 humans in cryonic chambers. Lieutenant Commander Data asks to move the chambers to the Enterprise, and Commander Riker agrees. Picard returns and orders the Enterprise to the Neutral Zone, as several Federation outposts near the edges of the zone have not responded to communications. He explains that the conference was about the potential threat of the Romulans, who have not been seen for the last several decades. As Data and Chief Medical Officer Dr. Crusher work to thaw the cryonically preserved humans, Picard admonishes Data for bringing them aboard during a crucial time, and puts Riker in charge of looking after them. The survivors, Claire Raymond, a housewife, Ralph Offenhouse, a financier, and L.Q. Sonny Clemens, a musician, are from the late 20th century. All died of incurable diseases at the time and were placed in cryogenic suspension after their deaths in the hope that cures might be found in the future. Dr. Crusher, in reviving them, easily cures them of their illnesses. They are having to cope with the culture shock of awakening in a distant future with the realization that everything they knew and had are now gone. Of the 3, Clem seems to fare the best at adapting to life in the future and befriends Data. Claire is distraught at the thought of losing everyone she ever knew, particularly her children, so Counselor Troy suggests searching for Claire's descendants. Offenhouse is irritated by the lack of access to news or other information, and uses the comm unit to disturb Picard on the bridge. Picard comes down to assure everyone that all questions will be answered, but the ship's mission requires Picard's full attention. The Enterprise reaches the Neutral Zone and confirms that the outposts have been destroyed. They are still met by a Romulan warbird, and Commander Tebok questions why the Enterprise has approached the zone. As Picard tries to explain his actions, Offenhouse arrives on the bridge and threatens to disrupt the tense situation, though he correctly ascertains that the Romulans are also seeking answers. Picard and the Romulans agree to pool their resources to discover the culprit. Picard later comments that while the encounter went favorably, the Romulans may be a significant threat in future engagements. Picard arranges to transport the 20th century humans to Earth. Troy locates one of Claire's descendants on Earth, and while Claire is unsure of her place in her new reality, Troy suggests that family is a good starting point. Clemens expresses enthusiasm for the future, and Picard sends Offenhouse the challenge of improving himself. So yeah, kind of makes you want to destroying all those outposts. Anyway, let's look at some production elements here. Due to the impending Writers Guild of America strike, writer and co-executive producer Maurice Hurley developed the teleplay in a day and a half from fanfiction work by Deborah McIntyre and Mona Klee. Due to the strike, certain story ideas were removed from the plot, including the planned first episode of The Borg, which was subsequently delayed until the second season episode, Q Who. This was because the Neutral Zone was originally intended to be the first of a 2-part episode, but due to the strike there wasn't enough time to write the second part, and so the story was shortened. The second episode would have seen the Enterprise and the Romulans team up against the Borg. Oh, that would have been so cool to see! The script that was shot was the first draft, and due to the writer's strike in place, no amendments were subsequently made. Director James L. Conway later explained, quote, "If there hadn't been a strike, I think it would have been a better script." It was the second episode of The Next Generation directed by Conway, the first being Justice, earlier in the first season. He didn't direct another episode until Frame of Mind during Season 6. Wow. And the writer's and director's guide for the series, written by the show's creator Gene Roddenberry prior to the first season, Romulans were covered by one of the main writing rules, which stated, quote, "No stories about warfare with Klingons or Romulans, and no stories of Vulcans. We are determined not to copy ourselves, and believe there must be other interesting aliens in a galaxy filled with billions of stars and planets." Following the perceived failure of the Ferengi as the main villains of TNG by the production staff, the Romulans became the main villains during the early years of the series. This was in addition to the Borg, who were originally developed as an insectoid race for this episode, but became a race of cyborgs by the time they first appeared in Q Who. While the Romulans made their first TNG appearance in this episode, they were previously mentioned in Angel 1 and Heart of Glory. This episode was the final one of season 1 to be completed, with the production wrapping 10 months after it began on Encounter at Farpoint. Nice. This episode featured an appearance by Gene Roddenberry's production assistant Susan Sackett as a Starfleet science officer. Her appearance was a result of winning a bet over her weight loss. She would go on to write 2 episodes of Next Generation alongside Fred Bronson, Menage a Troi, and The Game. Peter Mark Richmond appeared as Ralph Offenhouse, and had appeared in a guest star capacity in over 500 roles on television. Leon Rippey appeared as LQ Sonny Clemens, having previously appeared alongside Jonathan Frakes in North and South. Mark Lamo made his second Star Trek appearance in this episode, having appeared in Lonely Among Us as the Antiken leader, and go on to appear in Season 4's The Wounded as Cardassian Gul Macet, before being cast once more as a Cardassian in the recurring role of Gul Dukat on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Two of the time-displaced humans return in Star Trek literature, with Ralph Offenhouse appearing in the Next Generation novel Debtor's Planet as the Federation ambassador to the Ferengi, and again in the Star Trek Destiny trilogy as the Secretary of Commerce for the Federation. Claire Raymond made a further appearance in the Star Trek Department of Temporal Investigations novel Watching the Clock as the counselor for time-displaced people. Offenhouse, Raymond, and Sonny Clemens also appeared in the 2-part Star Trek The Eugenics Wars by Greg Cox, which was set prior to their appearance in this episode. Michael Westmore developed a new appearance from the Romulans in this episode, being required to take into account the concepts introduced for them in the original series episodes Balance of Terror and the Enterprise Incident. There was also a desire to ensure that they appeared different from the Vulcans, with the default appearance of the Romulans to look more aggressive and warlike. Westmore developed prosthetic forehead pieces, taking careful steps to ensure that they didn't look like Neanderthals. Rather than create individual designs for each forehead as they did with the Klingons, a number of standard designs were created. The Romulan Warbird made its first appearance in this episode, with it being the final design of Andrew Probert for the Star Trek franchise, having previously designed both the Enterprise in Star Trek The Motion Picture and the Enterprise D for the Next Generation. The double-hulled nature of the starship originated in early designs. However, the wings were originally vertical rather than horizontal, with the size of the ship made to be deliberately larger than that of the Enterprise. Interesting. So overall, this is a pretty good episode, and I like the fact that we got to see the Romulans for the first time in TNG, so that was a major plus. So overall, I give The Neutral Zone 5 warp cores out of 5. Well, that was fun looking at all the episodes of Season 1, but tomorrow we start off Season 2 with The Child. So, until then, live long and prosper, everybody.